Good evening. To forget where I came from, to be silent in all the languages I speak, to give up the different dialects mingled in my mind, to give up the desire to leave a faraway street before I feel what's missing, to give up the man who didn't realize when we made love it would be impossible to hurt me, to give up all my maps on Via della Conciliazione, where my lover held his foreign name between his teeth, to give up my breath, to let the world bend in my lungs like a branch, to give up my eyes like scarred marble, to see an entire life in a window, releasing the heaviness of the fog, to give up traveling, to let an old sea reach a new sea, to forget all I gave up, to remember where I come from, to make it speak. That was Catalogue of Happiness, published in the Irish Times. What's missed when we are missing? What can the imagination offer absence? What can it tell a nation destroyed by war, a soldier who's lost his limbs, a mother whose last image of her son has been destroyed, her only photo left, the one inside her mind? How does literature contemplate what's missing? Is it its duty? In what language does literature and politics speak? As writers, we are seduced by words. A demanding yet sweet solitude accompanies us. An hour can be a decade, a second, in a room contemplating a single word, comma, apostrophe, but never questioning the validity of the contemplation because it's as essential as breathing. And as every letter becomes a word, words construct a sentence, sentences a paragraph, paragraphs a page, pages a chapter, chapters a book, we realize that the voyage isn't only the entire trajectory, but every word is a journey. In understanding that, we realize that every one of us is part of the tapestry that makes the world. So we must uncover what's missing. For those whose dedication has been to literature, we know the more the world reads, the deeper our awareness. In understanding there is progress as knowledge heals and literature rebuilds. I'm a poet. Here are a few stories on how my poems were born, grew, migrated, were displaced and repositioned, and what's missed when we are missing. I spent my childhood in my parents' libraries. Although we moved a lot, the books stayed unmoved, as if defying time. I read mostly dead French and Russian male writers, Baudelaire and Dostoevsky. As my landscapes shifted, culturally, linguistically, politically, the contradictions around me grew. Only the poems and stories seemed to know I needed their friendship to explain things to me. I kept hearing people speak of differences that divide, but I was also experiencing something else that I didn't have words for. My notebooks became my rooms. I mostly mimicked what I read, unaware of the vastity of my worlds and the stories they carried. From the turbulence of war in the Middle East to political upheaval in Latin America and the Caribbean, to the glamour of Europe and the wealth of the United States. The paradoxes were endless. I'm unaware that I could write of people and places that many said didn't belong together. Missing were such poems and stories. The pages of my notebooks walked through snow and spoke perfect French, while the characters in my mind recited a stanza of Ave Maria in 6 languages. Je vous salue Marie, pleine de grâce. El Señor es contigo. Tu sei benedetta fra le donne. Panaia mitera tu theu. Pray for us sinners. Al-an wafisat mautina. But I didn't ask until much later if they could coexist on my pages, if I had to abandon them or would be forced to choose one. Things started to change when I began reading Caribbean, Latin American, and Francophone African and Arab literature. Aimé Césaire, Cahiers d'un retour au pays natal, Return to my native land, shifted me. Anything the Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish wrote steered me. One of my professors at the time, Floyd B. Barber, introduced me to Baldwin, and we discussed Black liberation struggles. Though freedom struggles were always part of my childhood, I was starting to understand the role of literature in society. For the first time, I thought about where what we write comes from. What was missing is where I belonged. Do writers belong to a nation, a language? In what language does an aspiring writer write, if without a mother tongue? And if I was to choose from the 7 languages that roamed around me, which dialect was I closest to? Which accent did I inhabit more easily? Which literary space would I belong to? I was fluent in the cultures of these languages, but didn't speak them fluently. And I felt freest in the American English, like walking down a New York City street with a short block, but that's never ending. The American English became my home in literature. But did American literature know voices like mine? I didn't know any living writers, and I didn't find an inclusive United States in the 1990s, but one that was marginalized, full of borders. Nonetheless, I started to write what I knew. In Paris, I came to know many living writers, including Darwish, who gave me my first writing assignment to interview Allen Ginsberg, who died a little over a month later. When I went to London, I studied with Derek Walcott. While doing my postgraduate degree at the University of London, diasporic writers were largely missing in the British literary scene. Arab and Black British writers were nearly absent. They emerged in the mid-1990s. I looked to Wasafari, which was housed in Queen Mary and Westfield College, and I started working with Sable, both magazines showcasing writers of color. What was missing even more were women writers, especially women writers of color. There is no successful society without women. I started researching women writers globally. That led to the publication of The Poetry of Arab Women, a contemporary anthology. The blurbs on the back of the book tells a very interesting story. June Jordan, Adrienne Rich, Joy Harjo, Caroline Forche. These women, along with Naomi Shihab Nye, Alice Walker, Toni Morrison, Maxine Hong Kingston, among many others, moved the conversation forward, telling stories and writing poems that were missing. The business of publishing wanted a label. I identified with none of their boxes. I kept writing what I knew. Born out of the restorative impulse to heal after 9/11 and eradicate misconceptions and negative stereotypes of the East, I co-edited along with Tina Chang and Ravi Shankar, Language for a New Century, contemporary poetry from Southeast Asia, East Asia, Central Asia and the Middle East, published by W. W. Norton. The book accrued a dimensionality of its own as we, the editors, hyphenated Americans, and New Yorkers, were put in touch with far-flung poets and translators. 450 poets from 61 countries writing in over 40 languages, grouped thematically into 9 sections that works against normative taxonomy, a conversation threaded across continents. Editing an anthology is not for the faint of heart or the lacking in stamina. You have to embody the planner and the architect, the painter and the artisan, dreaming of the grandeur in the nave of the chapel, even when changing the minutest grammatical element in a poem translated in inefficient English. One must be a microscope and a telescope at once. It felt akin to building a symphony that, if striking a few chords to help usher in a new era of global understanding. Where are the borders of our consciousness? What's missing when we speak about diversity? Do we dive into the necessary details? For example, we know that 800 languages are spoken in New York City. Do we know that there are at least 100 languages and dialects in Sudan? And nearly 20,000 languages and dialects and 22 official languages in India? Or that Arabic has over 12 million distinct words? The Oxford English Dictionary includes just over 170,000 words. Arabic has 23 words for love. This also changes what and how we write and translate in language. Fragments can be whole if we connect. Translation taught me connection. Translators are key cultural intermediaries. Without translation, we would be isolated in the land of our minds, culture, country. Are writers and poets citizens of literature? Poetry is not a transactional language, but one that values subjectivity. And it is there we can begin to emphasize with those we share the planet with, those with whom we wish to share the same peace and prosperity. Literature is evidence that language is a living pulse. It breathes, echoes, touches. It's evidence that it can become a conversation that can lead us to spaces where we can manifest tolerance and justice, where we learn to listen. Listen to what we imagine separates us but doesn't, what we think divides us but doesn't. We too often forget that the personal, is a fundamental dimension of the global. In the Caribbean in the 1980s, the tropical heat cooling down and evening approaching, I saw my caretaker on a low wooden hay chair, her legs bent, her knees at the level of her chest, her arms on her legs, her head down. She seemed consumed by a single thought. I didn't know it at the time, but that look on her face was one I would be seeing in women I crossed. Women who spent their lives working hard without ever receiving any compensation or relief. I asked her if she was fine. She always told me Afro-Caribbean folk tales, so I instinctually started telling her a story. She smiled. Soon that smile became a laughter. Her entire spirit responded with amusement to my story. I can't tell you what I recounted. I wasn't even aware that I was creating a story. Years later, I saw the same look on her face, except this time she seemed paralyzed. She explained that she dreamed her daughter would educate herself, become a professional, leave poverty. But got pregnant and was unmarried. She had sacrificed everything for her daughter. This left her with a profound regret, the kind that tears the soul into pieces. I held her hand. Suddenly, she asked me if I remembered the story I told her that day years ago, when we were both entranced in a feverish spell of storytelling. I, the teller, her, the listener. Her entire demeanor changed, as if she didn't have a care in the world, and she began telling me the story I once told her. Wildly invented adventures I had with a girl in the neighborhood. I didn't remember a word. She apparently remembered every one. The story had become its own event. Language had transformed our psyche and our trauma. Power has the ability to tell another story. Voices like hers, mostly missing. Who tells the story and how the story is told equals a different story. A book too often becomes a group of people, an entire country, often an entire region. And what of the uncertain corridors of memory? How does remembrance and forgetfulness accompany and enter literature as a revealing and healing agent? Should we remember to forget, as Mahmoud Darwish tells us in the book about the Beirut War, Memory for Forgetfulness? I've been obsessed with history because I come from two worlds, East and West, where each had a version of the same history. In my early 20s, while walking on Star Street in the old city of my ancestral city of Bethlehem, looking for answers of my not so fully formed questions about this town, which the world seemed to know through religious texts and I knew through traditions, a distinct relative insisted I come to his rooftop to see his garden. He grew thyme, basilica, mint. He even raised pigeons. All this while on a rooftop overlooking the city, in the distance, the valley leading to the Dead Sea. That house was also one of the oldest and most extraordinary examples of 19th century architecture in Bethlehem. But the reason he really wanted me to come to the rooftop was to read me a poem he'd written, loosely translated. He collapsed on the cold cement of a cell. We shared for years. I didn't move. He needed death more than he needed me. His fall echoed through the entire jail, but the silence on the other side was louder. I lay my head on the bed, imagining what he will tell me tomorrow. Who was he? I asked. My friend, he said. His wife appeared. Seeing me stunned, she said, Don't listen to him. We don't know what exactly happened. Did it really occur? And if it did, it was the only recording of this man's death. His poem, with its disturbing details, was the sole account we have. If it wasn't true, did it matter? It moved me deeply, made me think of death as a form of freedom, of love. It made me realize that there isn't a nation smaller than its dream, which reminded me of the moment Nelson Mandela, and I still shiver hearing his serene voice, said, and I quote, in the dark days when all seem hopeless in our country, when men refuse to hear her resonant voice, she took her own life. She was both an Afrikaner and an African. Her name is Ingrid Jonker, and she wrote, and I quote, the child is not dead, not at Lunga, nor at Nyanga, nor at Orlando, nor at Sharpeville, nor at the police post at Philippi, where he lies with a bullet through his brain. The child who only wanted to play in the sun at Nyanga is everywhere. The child grown to a man treks on through all Africa. The child grown to a giant journeys over the whole world without a pass. This resonates loudly today. That's the power of literature. It weaves us together in unexpected ways. The poem on the rooftop seemed to have healed him of his friend's death or another undisclosed ache. What truth matters most? We are the stories we inherited and the ones we decided to keep. We modify, edit, decide what's relevant, sometimes rewrite all of it. Every new information changes the story. Ultimately, we choose the story of our life. Nonfiction and fiction are intertwined. Marilyn Robinson writes in Housekeeping, fact explains nothing. On the contrary, it is fact that requires explanation. We are missing without language. We have gone to Pablo Neruda for the language of love and the murmurs of the heart, to Chinua Achebe for the ancient language of conflict between the individual and society, to Michael Ondaatje for the language of fable and fact, to Rumi for the language of transcendence, of the spirit and of light, to Lorca for the language of possibility. In my collection, Poet in Andalucía, a recreation of Lorca's journey in reverse from Poet in New York, I explored Lorca's Andalucía, where Islamic, Judaic, and Christian traditions remain a mirror of the past that is terrible and terrific. Maybe there I could find answers on convivencia, coexistence. I'm not sure if I did, but Lorca said, Lo que más me importa es vivir. On his journey, I discovered peace is there if we want to find it. Because as was true for Lorca, what people want most is to live. It's language we go to for healing. Without our imaginations, we are machines of brutality and injustice. During COVID, we could not move. Our imagination moved for us. This poem was published in The New Humanist, Life in a Room. My room was the size of my life. Outside the window, the trees stopped swaying, the stars stopped singing, the Empire State stayed still. The desk, chair, books slept. We grew dark. Once we tried to laugh, tried to see each other, but restlessness took over. We moved the objects around, the ashtrays, the keys of stolen houses, the crosses and umbrellas. We looked at the socket on the wall for hours, waiting to see thunder, a beehive, or a lover's quarrel. The pink sofa was exhausted by our stares. From our window, we walked for miles through the city and the desert to find life, repented for not having cherished it. We looked at loneliness, let our bodies peel the pain to reach all of love. For a moment, we forgot. Language was against dying. Words are travelers. Books, border crossers. Traveling helped me find the precision of language. Literature builds worlds and houses the human spirit. I've tried with my work to build an architecture for the wanderer. Writing took me all over the globe, and poems took me farthest in the smallest space. Every writer opened up a world for me. Their work universal and unifying. But we need to read as many as possible to see our entire self. While my hyphenated mother tongues were finding a way to create its original language, a full orchestra, the American literary scene shifted. I was reminded of that while in conversation at the Emirates Airlines Book Festival with Claudia Rankin and Bernadine Evaristo, who I happened to know years ago while studying under Walcott, as she did too. How long our voices have taken to come this far. But as the Haitian writer and multidisciplinary artist Franck Etienne told me, during the earthquake, everything moved or fell, but the books remained standing. Books and writers create community and unity. There's a proverb at the core of South African society, rooted in community. I quote, "A person is a person because of other people. We are a product of each other's actions and decisions. It seems we must remember that more than ever these days. Extremity is born out of simplification. Literature resists that. It will be our constellation. It will be satirical and ardent. It will speak the language of the common man and that of the literary privileged. It will be absurdity and high resolution pixels of the heart. It will be bliss, entrance and interlace. It will deconstruct the borders of our minds because nature is an open paradise for all." Haruki Murakami in Norwegian Woods writes, "What happens when people open their hearts? They get better. For those we didn't get to on time, I say, we could not save you, but listen anyway." I'll end with a poem I drafted in one of my favorite places, the Biblioteca Angelica in Roma. American love story in Rome. I had a dream I left the other side of myself in New York City. I have to go back to get it, but I can't move. I wonder if I shut the windows, left the flowers to wilt, left food to decay, left my heart on the Queensboro Bridge. I feel my mind blow open. I run to the Tiber, chasing chaos the way a heart does after it's broken. Seeing my favorite song sinking the way the dying does for days. I don't know what it all means. Maybe that's how the world walks into us with worry. Or maybe that's how it goes, like a boat coming from the future to take us away. Thank you. Good evening. To forget where I came from,